Alright, this is the 2022 comic book unveiling. These are discarded comic books from comic shops across the land. And we're going to start with this one, which has a nice preview of the classic Fantastic Four from the 1980s. What do you think, baby? You want to see the comic book unveiling? Okay, she'd rather eat her waffle cracker. Alright, so let's take a look at this one. Featuring Marvel and DC only is what this bag says. So this is often fraud. They'll have comics from Free Comic Book Day stuck in here. But we're going to take a look at what we got. So this is a beautiful condition Fantastic Four from 1983, classic era. They're under the mental control of Mantracora. Nice Cracker Jack ad on the side. So, this is written by John Byrne, and John Byrne likes to do very long serial stories. So, obviously, Mantracora was introduced earlier. Jim Shooter's the editor. This beautiful John Byrne artwork. They're introduced to the cult of Mantracora. They get their reward. Their reward is not what they anticipated. See this bubble gum commercial? That was an actual commercial with a little boy, and this is the comic version of it. I still remember that commercial. Alright, so the Fantastic Four are pilgrims in hiding. We don't know if they're on Earth, but from the looks of things, I'd say they're no longer on Earth. What do you think, baby? You think the Fantastic Four will get back to Earth this episode? What do you think, Bella? No? Okay. Alright, so this is almost a preview for the Stargate movie. They go and meet the natives. Johnny Storm tells Ben Grimm that there's some lovely ladies there. This is 1983, so there's no attempt made at forced diversity. They're all a bunch of Caucasian girls in the desert. Dungeons and Dragons, stealing the souls of the 80s generation. Oh my. Looks like Mrs. Storm and Mrs. Richards and Mr. Richards are getting down to business, and they're being interrupted by Al-Qaeda assassins. That won't do. Hey, look at that. She-Hulk being written as an actual person and not a vapid, self-absorbed lady on a dating site past her prime. Bella, I'm trying to talk here. When you make noise like that, it doesn't help me. Don't make noise. Yeah, it doesn't help. Don't make noise. I'm recording this for a video. She-Hulk ran into a barrier, and it looks like the mighty Avengers are not able to help in this problem. Alright, looks like Mantracora is not that bad of a person after all. He's apologizing and welcoming the Fantastic Four to his world. Probably he's just seeing what he can get out of them and use them. And it looks like something nefarious is going on, where their minds are all linked to summon his power. And look at this. This is really, you'd almost think the Stargate movie stole their whole plot for the movie off of this issue by John Byrne. Here, Mantracora turns out to be an insect creature that was controlling all of these people. Fantastic Four finds their way out of the place there. Remember when Marvel had bullpen bulletins that weren't about politics? They were telling you about the issues to follow. Who is Vince? Oh, Vince Coletta. And Reed Richards has had his mind absorbed. You gotta tune into the next issue. In television. Wow, that game system is going to be around for many, many years. And I actually played this game at a friend's house. It's very lame. It's just basically Pong with lightsabers. Now we've got another classic back cover here. Let's see if this is another classic issue here. It is Marvel's The Sleepwalker. their version of the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman. Obviously not doing as well, but you can't knock the artwork. Bob Budiansky was the writer and colorist. I can see what his talent is focused on. Alright. Obviously, baby, the demographic for comics back in the 80s was young males and not for girls, right? So they're trying very desperately to get you to buy this Sleepwalker comic. You'd have to actually open it to see the sexy girl through all the scenes, though. Alright, the Sleepwalker is entering your dreams. And I don't know if this came out before Neil Gaiman's The Sandman series, but he's obviously doing a pretty good job of showing the dream world and the dreamscape. Endless Dreams. Oh, Terminator 2 just came out. This is an issue of the 90s. Now this is a great spread here. Marvel heroes standing up to the Sandman. Early 90s Wolverine. The 90s really showed a degradation of the whole mutant universe after Chris Claremont did what he could in the 80s. Oh, he's wrapped up in his own binding dreams. You find your crackers more interesting, baby? Yeah, I'm sure you do. What do you think, Bella? Alright, so another happy adventure of the Sleepwalker, and he shakes hands with his latest victim. It's issue 3, so they're still looking for a name for the Sleepwalker's letter page. Alright, that was from still classic era, $1. Now here's an electronic game featuring the X-Men on the back. Let's see what this is. Oh, it's an amazing What If. What if Phoenix rose again? They did this many times in the What If series. This is dated 1992. It's about the time I stopped reading comic books altogether, moving on to J-Man comics from Hong Kong, but that's a different story. So she's fighting Rachel, her daughter from an alternate future. You can tell if they were ever out of ideas for What If, they'd always go back to this story of Phoenix. Henry Peter Gyrich of S.H.I.E.L.D. is mass-producing Sentinels. Logan walks around in his superhero costume when he's off duty, which is kind of funny. Let's see if he can wake up Phoenix. So I remember this one. He just keeps punching her until Phoenix comes out and decks him. Then she kisses him by way of apology. And Wolverine has to put her down. But unfortunately, she is Dark Phoenix, so his claws have no effect on her. Phoenix leaves. And the X-Men and Magneto, their nemesis, are forced to fight the Sentinels on their own. It looks like things are all over. And then Phoenix shows up and scraps them all. Unfortunately, Nightcrawler dies. For those who watched the Marvel movies of the X-Men, Nightcrawler was a beloved comics character who was the best friend of Kitty Pryde. Something they weren't really able to convey in the movies. Kitty Pryde sacrifices herself by jumping into the master robot, master mold, and she dies. Then Phoenix wraps them all up, which she could have done 10 pages ago. A acceptable ending. And finally, a beautiful Chris Claremont era Uncanny X-Men from 1987. This was a great time in my personal life. I was finally going to the high school I wanted to. And the X-Men, despite the goofy artwork, the X-Men were in their peak of writing at this time. Magneto is the leader of the school. He's fighting Havoc. And we got some Morlocks. There's Callisto. Unfortunately, Sabretooth is going to kill Polaris. Havoc was a one-dimensional character. He was always being written complaining about being in the X-Men, but he was an original founding X-Men. Havoc says, "I'm back on the team." But unfortunately, the bad guys have turned Polaris evil with a typical late 80s ridiculous haircut. Unfortunately, they've unlocked the evil side of Polaris, who's captured all these people. Malice, you possessed her. House 2, the second story. I remember this being advertised in every comic book in 1987, and probably no one went to see this movie. It's actually a pretty good sampling of classic 80s and 90s comic books. I kind of cheated because I flipped through the binding, seeing ones that looked pretty good. It's all downhill from here, folks. Stay tuned.